I placed the last fork beside the linen napkin and stepped back to take in the table, quietly proud of the almond cake centered on the stand, powdered sugar, settled like a dusting of early snow. The violet-trimmed china was only for special occasions, but I suppose a birthday counted. Juliet's birthday. They arrived 15 minutes late, breezing in with cold air and the scent of perfume that didn't come from anywhere near a pharmacy. Juliet wore a pale satin dress, the kind that doesn't wrinkle because it's never meant to sit. Colin kissed my cheek, distracted, and handed me a metallic gift bag. I smiled, then offered Juliet the seat I'd set for her, the one with the cushion I usually kept for guests. "This looks amazing, Marvena," Juliet said, glancing over the table like it might be listed in a magazine. We talked mostly about real estate prices, prenatal vitamins, and something about a new yoga studio. I poured cider into Juliet's glass, and when it came time for cake, I lit a single candle. She blew it out with a graceful breath, and the room clapped. I was halfway through slicing the cake when Colin stood, tapped his glass with a spoon, and cleared his throat. "We have an announcement," he said, smiling toward Juliet, who placed a delicate hand over her stomach. "We're expecting." More applause. Someone said, "Congratulations." I reached for a second plate. And he added, with the baby coming, "We've decided to move into the house." He looked at me as if he were handing me good news. "Your house, Mom. It just makes sense. Big yard, good schools nearby. It's already home." Then he pulled a small envelope from his jacket pocket tied with a gold ribbon and placed it in Juliet's hands. She opened it like it was a love letter. Inside my spare keys. No one looked at me. They just clinked glasses and smiled. I didn't say a word. I didn't touch my cake. I just watched my house disappear, right there at my own dinner table. Juliet reached into the glossy shopping bag and pulled out a white baby onesie. "Best grandma in the world," it read in glittery gold letters. She handed it to me with both hands, her smile sugary sweet and oddly fixed, as if she were offering an olive branch no one had asked for. I took it, holding the soft fabric between my fingers, like something breakable. Around me, everyone clapped again. Quiet claps, polite claps. The kind you give after a high school performance that didn't quite land. I looked at the room, my curtains, the ones I made by hand when Colin was still in grade school. The print of the lighthouse over the mantel, crooked now. The chairs I reupholstered myself 2 winters ago. Everything looked familiar and foreign at once, like a dream that had started to rot at the edges. I glanced down at the onesie again. It looked like it came in a 3-pack. Colin said something about painting the baby's room soft gray. Juliet murmured something about a rocking chair. Someone asked about names. I nodded, smiled, nodded again. My throat ached from swallowing what I didn't know how to say. Even the dog under the table didn't look at me. By the time they left, the cake was half eaten, the wrapping paper tossed into the recycling bin. I loaded the dishwasher slowly, plate by plate, like drawing out the last steps of a dance no one had noticed I was still doing. I wiped the counters twice, maybe 3 times. When I turned off the lights, the silence that filled the house wasn't rest, it was hollow. A space that echoed with the sound of something being taken without a door ever closing. Upstairs, I lay awake for hours. The onesie sat folded on the corner of my dresser like a private joke I hadn't quite understood. "We've decided," Colin had said. Not, "Would you be okay if..." Not, "We wanted to ask." Just a verdict. Final. Like the judge's gavel had already dropped. I couldn't sleep. Not even a little. At 3 in the morning, I gave up trying. The silence in the house had shifted heavier now, like it knew what was coming before I did. I stepped into the hallway, flicked on the light, and opened the closet. The top shelf held forgotten things, a heating pad, a warped photo album, a basket of old thread. I reached behind it all, and pulled out the blue accordion folder. It still had the dust of neglect on its spine. At the kitchen table, I made tea I wouldn't drink and started sifting. Old tax statements, receipts from the roof repair, letters from Colin during college back when he still signed them. Love your boy. Then I saw it. Tucked between two manila envelopes folded just once was the document. My name near the bottom slanted and rushed. The ink had bled slightly, as if even then it knew better than I did. Durable power of attorney. Colin Salazar named as my legal agent in the event of cognitive impairment or medical crisis. I remembered now. The hospital. The pneumonia. 4 days of fever and fluorescent lights. Colin had come with takeout and concern in his eyes. He'd said it was just a form the hospital needed, standard protocol. I hadn't even sat up to sign it. And now, reading it with clear eyes, my chest hollowed out. If a doctor said I wasn't of sound mind, Colin could act on my behalf. Sell the house, move in, move me out. I pressed my fingers against the paper, half expecting it to burn. He hadn't asked. He hadn't warned me. He'd waited. The folder stayed open in front of me for a long time. The tea went cold. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. But something shifted. Not like a crack. More like a line being drawn. And once I saw it, I knew I couldn't unsee it. Juliet showed up the next afternoon with a green juice in one hand and her other resting on her stomach like a badge. Just stopping by, she said, to take a few measurements. She didn't ask if it was a good time. She rarely did anymore. I followed her movements from the kitchen as she walked through the house like it already belonged to her. She paused in corners, mumbled things about natural light and baby-safe finishes. She held her phone out, snapping pictures of my hall closet, my pantry, the alcove where I used to keep Colin's school shoes. She excused herself to the bathroom, humming as she disappeared down the hall. Her purse, a pale, leather designer bag, sat on the couch, flopped open and careless. I shouldn't have looked, but I did. Inside was a crisp ultrasound photo, the outline of a fetus curled like a comma. But no name, no date, no hospital seal. Just the image, too clean, too staged. I brought it closer to the light and squinted. There, barely visible like a ghost in the corner, was a faint watermark. A stock photo site, the kind used for brochures or baby blogs. I slipped the photo back exactly where I found it. Zipped the bag halfway, just as she'd left it. She came out of the bathroom talking about sage green paint and the old dresser in the guest room. Do you think it could be refinished? I'll think about it, I said. Then I poured the tea. 2 cups. Quiet hands, smooth gestures. No questions, no slips. We sipped in near silence. She complimented the garden view. I offered her a biscotti. When she left, she kissed my cheek again. You're going to be the best grandma, she whispered. I watched her float down the steps, purse back under her arm, the lie tucked neatly beside her keys. I didn't say a word. Juliet came again on a Thursday. Same floaty dress, same breathy voice that sounded like it belonged in a neighborhood ad. She said she was just dropping by to feel the light in the rooms again. She wandered through my living room barefoot, commenting on which direction the sun hit the couch. I stayed seated this time, a worn novel in my lap I hadn't actually read in days. She chatted as she moved about, baby-proofing corners, repainting the stairwell, maybe even knocking out a wall or two to open up the energy. I just nodded. I didn't trust my voice anymore. Before leaving, she accidentally left a sketchbook on the arm of my chair. I'll be back next week, she said sweetly. Let me know what you think. Then she kissed my cheek again and walked out humming. I waited until I heard the car pull away. Then I opened the book. Every page was labeled meticulously drawn diagrams of my house, my walls, my floors, arrows and notes in pink ink. Remove for light, play area here. Juliet hates this brown must go. Taped inside were swatches. Soft creams, pale blues, 1. with a faint shimmer. I ran my fingers over each square like they could still remember my hands scrubbing those walls clean every spring. The final page was a spreadsheet. Salridge family renovation budget, $29,500. There were numbers, contractors' estimated labor timelines, but no mention of me. Not once. I closed the sketchbook gently, carefully smoothing the crease down the spine. I placed it back where she'd left it. Same angle, same page, slightly sticking out. 15 minutes later, she came back inside for it, smiling like nothing in the world had shifted. "You'll be the best grandma," she said again, her tone more script than affection. I walked her to the door and watched her drive away. I called Clara the morning after Juliet's visit. Yolanda had slipped me her number on a yellow sticky note weeks earlier, said she was the kind who'd seen things. I didn't explain much. I didn't have to. Her voice was calm, low. She told me to bring everything. Clara's office was above an old pharmacy, quiet and dim, the kind of place where you spoke with your eyes as much as your mouth. I handed her the blue folder without a word. She read for a long time, flipping pages slowly, then going back to the beginning. When she looked up, her mouth pressed into a flat line. "It's all legal," she said. "If your son gets a doctor to sign off any doctor, he could act on your behalf. Sell the house. Move assets. Change your care plan." I said nothing for a moment. Then I looked at her and said what had been sitting in my chest for days. "I don't want to be erased quietly." She nodded once. "I know someone. His name was Ignacio Torres. A notary, mostly retired, still sharp. The kind of man who knew how to tie knots so they didn't come undone. We met the next afternoon. Ignacio didn't offer coffee or pleasantries. He opened his notebook, clicked his pen, and said, "What do you need done?" I told him I needed to sell my house quietly. No banners, no moving vans, no signatures they could intercept. He made 2 calls while I sat there. 2 days later, Salvador arrived. Worn boots, quiet eyes, a handshake like closing a vault. We spoke less than 15 minutes. I told him the house came with the washer and dryer, but nothing else. He offered a price below market. I didn't haggle. I said yes. We signed that Thursday morning. No champagne, no ribbon. Just a pen I brought myself, and a copy I folded into my purse. That afternoon, I began packing the parts of my life no one else knew how to recognize. I started with the smallest things. A photo of my parents tucked into a coat pocket. My late husband's letters sealed in a plastic bag hidden under the liner of an old suitcase. No boxes, no tape, no noise. If someone walked in, they'd think I was packing for a short trip. Maybe a weekend. Not a final one. I wrapped the framed photos in scarves, the spines of my cookbooks in old flannel shirts. My mother's teapot, the one with the chipped lid, I wrapped in 2 dish rags and slid into a canvas grocery bag under the sink. There was no urgency, only precision. Each drawer was sorted, each cabinet wiped down. I left the linen closet intact, towels, folded spare sheets in place. But the will had changed. The trust was in place. The deed had moved hands. I forwarded my mail to a small box in San Angelo and canceled the landline. I left the fridge stocked just enough to look lived in. A weekend bag sat by the front door, half-zipped visible. A decoy. Juliet came by again that Saturday, all warm smiles and breezy charm. Said she was just in the neighborhood. I made her tea. Let her sit on my sofa. Let her talk about floor-stained colors and playroom lighting. She left with a hug and a phrase she liked to toss at me like a gift. "You'll be the best grandma." I smiled. I nodded. Then I watched her drive off from behind the curtain. That night, my phone buzzed on the table. It was Colin. "Don't make this harder than it is. It's already ours." No greeting, no question. Just assumption in a sentence. By the time the sun came up, I had already taken down the picture over the fireplace. The only thing left hanging was the silence. By the time their car pulled into the drive, I was already gone, sipping gas station coffee from a paper cup. The porch looked bare in the video. No rocking chair, no wind chime, no me. Juliet stood there, her eyes glistening in the morning sun, holding a folded cardigan that didn't belong to her. The caption read, "Clearing out Grandma's house for baby Solridge." The music was soft nostalgic, the kind they play in furniture commercials. I watched it from the booth of a roadside diner, my phone resting on a napkin. Comments poured in. How could she leave like that? No warning, no compassion. That poor young couple. They didn't know me. They didn't ask, and I didn't answer. I closed the app, slipped the phone into my purse, and focused on what mattered. By mid-morning, I was back in Clara's office. She had coffee waiting, real coffee. She read the draft I'd brought, every line of it. My new will, the trust, the protections, the Quiet Hearth Fund, a long-term account to help women over 60 facing coercion, displacement, or quiet erasure behind sweet voices and family smiles. My savings, the proceeds from the house sale, and everything I didn't owe anyone placed into something no one could rewrite or wrap in a ribbon. Clara nodded when she finished. "It's thorough," she said, "and it's yours." I signed. One page, then the next. No ceremony, no applause, just clean ink on warm paper. By the time I stepped back into the hallway, I felt taller. Not louder, but solid. Like stone no one had the tools to chip away. I checked into a short-term rental near a lake where the wind moved slower, where the porch light didn't flicker from too many rewires. That night, Juliet posted again. This time, a video inside my old living room, now bare walls and muted grief. We were going to bring our child home here. Let them tell it. Let them stage it. I had other plans to fund. They came on a Thursday, early afternoon after the mail had been dropped and the shadows were short. I recognized the car, first Colin's hybrid, the one he once said was too sensible for family errands. He stepped out in the same suit jacket he wore at the wedding, the shoulders stiff with dust. Juliet followed her dress, pale and floating, like she was hoping for a soft breeze and a softer welcome. She held a bottle of wine wrapped in gold foil, and something else, square flat pastel ribbon, tied neatly at the corner. A frame. I didn't have to see it up close to know what it was. They stood on the edge of the porch, rehearsed concern on their faces. "Mom, Colin called, we just want to talk." His voice carried through the screen door, gentle, but strained. Juliet stepped forward, held the frame against her chest, like a peace offering. "Don't make the baby grow up without you," she whispered. I stayed behind the linen curtains still. There was no baby. There never had been. Juliet's hand curled tighter around the wine bottle. "You're really going to treat your grandchild like a stray?" I didn't answer. She waited. He adjusted his collar. They shifted, glanced at each other. The wind picked up. A dog barked down the street. Still, I didn't answer. After a long pause, they stepped back together. Colin looked toward the window once more, almost hopeful, but I didn't move. They left slowly, like actors who had hit every mark and remembered every line, only to find the curtain wouldn't rise. The wine was never uncorked. The frame never unwrapped. By the time their car reached the bend in the road, I had already moved to the table, set out a fresh sheet of paper, and opened the folder marked evidence. The letter came folded inside a pink envelope, tucked between a utility bill and a catalog she never ordered. Floor's handwriting hadn't changed. Slanted a little rushed, like she couldn't quite keep up with what she wanted to say. "I saw what you did," it read. "You're braver than I'll ever be." I stared at the words for a long time, then set the envelope down and walked to the kitchen. I brewed a single cup of coffee and sat by the window while it cooled. Then I wrote back. "You already are," I said. "Don't let them make you forget." When I sealed the envelope, I didn't add a return address. She'd know. Later that evening, I opened my contacts and scrolled without stopping. I paused briefly on Colin's name, then on Juliet's, then pressed delete. One, then the other. I stood at the back door for a moment, bare feet against cool tile. Then I stepped outside. The grass was soft and damp from a morning shower. The old planter boxes were crooked, some cracked, but I saw them differently now. Tiny green shoots were pushing through wild onions, maybe, or mint. It didn't matter. I walked the garden path slower than I used to, my toes brushing moss I hadn't noticed before. No camera followed. No comments, no filtered reels. Just air and soil and the low hum of something starting over. I didn't speak. I didn't narrate. I didn't send an update to anyone. I just opened the windows and let the quiet in. And for the first time in a long while, the silence wasn't what was left behind. It was what I chose.